All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Action Academy podcast. We have the fan favorite, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ryan Pineda. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Happy to be here.
Dude, we're in person this time.
I know, you're here at the office. We got you in
Studio B. It's the Studio Dreams, Studio Champions, man.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, it's a little different from you being in your kitchen post-birth.
I forgot about that.
Post-delivery of your child.
Yeah, that was over a year ago, or almost a year ago. Yeah, to the day.
I'm excited to dive in today because we're going to have a really interesting conversation about cash flow. So we can get into equity conversation later in the episode, because what I want to talk about truly is that path from 6-figure to 7-figure to 8-figure, the different questions that you're asking, the different thoughts that you're having, the different problems that you're facing along the journey. Your thoughts on cash flow have changed over the last decade of you being in the game. Talk about what you used to think about cash flow and what do you think about it today, especially with the strategies that you use to get it.
Yeah, I got started in real estate back in 2010 as a realtor. So I got started right at the beginning, I guess the end of the recession, the beginning of everything turning around. And real estate was super cheap. The average house here in Vegas was $100,000. And when I grew up, the thing we always heard was buy rental properties, buy single families. And honestly, at that time, it made a lot of sense. Dude, if you go buy a $100,000 property in Vegas that's newer, you don't have any of these issues, and back then it was renting for $1,000, $1,200. It's
sense.
This makes a lot of sense. And even in 2015, when I started investing, I'd listen to Bigger Pockets, and they're talking about cash flow and rentals and passive income. And I started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad and all these things. And even at that time, I got it. It did make sense. Okay, the average house in Vegas at that time might have been, it was still not even 200, I think. And so it was still making sense. You look at the landscape today, we're in 2024, going into 2025, and it's like the average house in Vegas is $500,000. It rents for $3,000. So, the mortgage on $500,000 is going to be like $3,500.
Correct.
We're not talking about even the property management, the repairs, the vacancies. You're going to lose over $1,000 a month just buying a normal house in like a normal city. Like Vegas ain't like this super expensive place like California or whatever. This is a normal metro. And we're seeing this all over the country. And so the idea of single family rentals being a way to get cash flow, in my opinion, is dead. Like, I just don't think it's real anymore.
Do you think that there's any kind of resurgence? Because right now, this is another cool thing to ask, because we're recording this, I forget what day it is, but we're mid-September, and Jerome Powell just lowered the interest rate 50 basis points. And so the original plan was to lower it 25 basis points, and so he's a little bit more heavy-handed here, but I don't think that's really going to impact the market today. So what do you think?
It's good. It'll have optimism, but it won't impact what we're talking about with cash flow. Even if you were to drop it a point, it still doesn't cash flow. And when you drop interest rates, we know prices go up. So inevitably, we're still going to be in the same situation. Even if they drop rates, prices will go up, and we're still going to have this issue of you can't even cash flow.
Correct.
Yeah.
So single family is dead. RIP.
For cash flow. And
for cash flow. Well, dude, I don't even own my own house anymore. I rent, and I see a lot of people. Because exactly what you just said, for me to go get the type of house or even the condo that I want, for me to purchase it, it's going to be double what I pay to rent.
Yeah, I don't even know why that person's renting it to you, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not cash flowing unless you bought a big apartment. Then okay, if you're in like a big multifamily, okay, then they have economies of scale with that unit. But dude, if you just bought like a multi-million-dollar home or something, it is not going to rent for your mortgage.
Correct, and that's what a lot of people are running into. And my friends and your friends, I see a lot of them that are like, hey, they've got these multi-million-dollar houses. They're renting them.
Yeah. And
it makes more sense, and they can move. And you talked to Grant Cardone, like that's his jam, is he's like, I want to rent instead of own where I live.
100%. And that's not changing. A lot of people hate on Cardone, and him and I have become good friends over the years. And the more I've watched him the last 10 years and the things he was saying, the more I realize how accurate he was, like every step of the way.
Yeah. So if single family is not the answer, then we move into commercial and we move into small business, which you have opinions on both today because you own both.
Yep.
So let's talk about that and the progression of where you've been with your flipping company. You flipped houses. You bought kind of everything.
I've bought everything.
Yeah, you kind of been everywhere.
Everything. I've bought things. Yeah, I mean, to give context for those who don't know, I flipped over 700 homes at this point. We currently manage over 650 rental units. Most are commercial. I have some single family. I was doing Airbnbs back in 2017 before it was big. I've started, I think, probably 7 or 8 seven-figure businesses in the last few years. I've shut down a lot of them because they no longer were relevant, and I'm more focused on certain things now. But yeah, I've done everything you can imagine. I've sold businesses, I've shut them down, I've bought businesses. And now the last 10 years just being an investor and an operator and everything else, I have very strong opinions on how you actually get cash flow, because I don't think most people are really looking at cash flow even the right way. Yeah.
Let's say more on that after a 5-star rating and review for both of our podcasts.
That's right. That's right. There you go. There you go. So, I mean, look, commercial real estate, you can obviously get cash flow. You pencil it out and everything else. Here's the problem, and I own it, right? The problem is it's a lot of management. It takes a lot of capital to buy it.
Sure.
It takes time for its value to be established and everything else. And truly, this is the truth with commercial real estate and all real estate in general. You don't really make the money until you sell it. In almost every fund, there's not really cash flow. Like they might be able to give some dividends, but you're not making 12% cash flow off it every month. Like the reality is the IRR is determined the moment they sell. And once they sell it, that's when your 20% plus return is actually realized. So really, an apartment in most cases and a development are just like long flips. That's honestly what they are. So then you look at small businesses and you're like, all right, a lot of people are making buy small businesses cool again. My friend Cody Sanchez is really spearheading that.
I just bought a business before walking in here.
Oh, what'd you buy?
It's a commercial kitchen hood cleaning company.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just bought it. Yeah, signed the DocuSign right before walking in here.
Okay.
Like 10 minutes ago.
All right, so buying businesses is becoming a thing. Now, here's the thing, right? If you're buying it for like passive cash flow, then I don't know how much you plan to scale that business or if it's already like fully realized to its potential. But most of these like small businesses that we're talking about, like service companies and everything, you're buying it for what it is for the most part, right? If you go buy a laundromat, it basically is what it is. You might be able to improve it a little bit, but that's not even why you're buying it. You're buying it because you want cash flow.
Day one.
Right.
Yeah.
And with a small business like that, it's all right, there's clearly a cap. You've got to raise capital to buy this thing. And dude, it's a business. Like you're managing the marketing, the sales, the ops. You got to get the freaking washers and dryers replaced. There's just stuff to it, just like any other business. So can it be passive? Absolutely, if you hire the right people. But all in all, it is what it is. It requires capital, it requires work, and it's just capped.
Yeah, and it's like the number one thing that I've learned, and I'd like you to riff on this, is it's really a spectrum. Like passive income is a spectrum. It's not binary. It's not like active or passive. It's the degree to which it's passive.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
100%. Everything requires work. So I just looked back at my career the last 10 years and I was like, what have been like the most passive things for me? What's been like the most cash flow for me? And I just kind of looked at it and I said, I still have been flipping and wholesaling the whole time for the last decade. And I've spent an hour or two a week at that business. And it's made millions of dollars. Like in the end, isn't that what we're all looking for? Something that makes a boatload of money that you don't really spend a lot of time on? And wouldn't you be looking for like a return that is like far exceeding the risk? And so the more I started to think about this idea, I was like, I have a new way of looking at cash flow. So I've just been like coining it cash flow 2.0.
Hot damn.
Yeah, little marketing play. But essentially it's, to me, the best thing that you could hope for when it comes to cash flow is something that has, let's just call it infinite scale, right? Because these brick and mortar businesses have a cap. So something that has infinite scale. So we know that digital stuff and everything else has way more scalability than brick and mortar. Okay, so it would have infinite scale, which leads you to have like far higher profits and revenue and everything else. The next thing you would look at is risk. Okay, give me something that has minimal risk. We know flipping houses has massive risk. I've lost millions flipping houses over the years. I've made millions, but I've lost millions. So we got to look at the risk. And then we got to look at the time. How much time do we spend in this business or looking over this asset? Because even though you have rental property, let's just say you're buying single family rentals, like you still got to spend a lot of time finding your next deal, analyzing numbers, managing the manager. Like those things all still happen. And so I just started to think, okay, in my whole career, out of everything I've done, what has like the highest return with the least amount of risk and the least amount of time. That's the golden goose.
Mm-hmm.
And it just occurred to me that it's always been my wholesaling business. Because when you think about wholesaling in a nutshell, it's you don't need capital because you don't need to buy the properties. So we eliminate basically the entire risk portion of the deal because capital is the thing that really has risk.
Mm-hmm.
Return-wise, I don't know many other things where really in the wholesale business, all you got to do is invest in marketing. And you could invest a few thousand a month or 10,000 a month, 20,000 a month. And what other business could go make 100,000 a month, 200,000 a month without any like cost of goods, without any, you don't need huge labor.
Mm-hmm.
You could get away with just like a salesperson or two. Like it just doesn't exist. And so you start to look at the business of wholesaling, has scalability, its risk is super low. And then if you build it right and you get the right team, your time can be very minimal. And so I'm like, that's the golden goose, but you got to do it the right way, right? Mm-hmm. There's ways to do it, how to automate your lead flow, how to build the right sales process to turn and convert those leads, how to maximize your buyers on the back end. Like all those things have to happen to get that. But just from the get-go, if you're starting a business from scratch today and you were to compare that business versus say a laundromat,
mm-hmm.
it's not even close.
Correct.
Like a laundromat will be capped on what it can make. It will require way more capital to get it started. It requires way more people, way more time and headache, and it's way slower to build up. You and I know we can find a real estate deal today that could make us a boatload of money.
100%. And that's the thing about laundromats, especially like in the business buying space, is the less complex, like the less complexities that there are, the less room there is for value add.
Yep.
Because in real estate, it'd be like the equivalent of buying a house that's already fully furnished for a short-term rental.
Yeah.
Like that's a laundromat. And there's stuff that you have to do like retooling and everything. But I originally was going to buy a laundromat back in the day. And then after talking to a bunch of laundromat owners and being at the freaking closing table, I was like, wait a second, back it up. What's my vision for what I want to do? And do I really want to be managing these people? And do I want to be managing this clientele? And the answer was just straight up,
and you're probably
no.
like, what's my upside?
There is no upside. So,
and how much were you going to buy the laundromat for?
I was looking at buying one for $270,000.
Okay, so let's just take that perfect example, right? You were willing to spend $270,000. Now, whether it was cash or whether you were going to get a business loan, I don't really care. $270,000 was at risk, and then your upside was already capped at whatever it could be, and you knew the time and headache in order to hit that upside it was going to take. To me, that's just a terrible proposition.
Yeah, that was awful.
Yeah, but people are like loving it.
Yeah.
Because they're thinking it's passive income and they're like, dude, I can make $10,000 a month from this laundromat. And I'm like, no, guys, I don't even need you to spend $270,000. Invest $10,000 a month into a wholesale business, into marketing to get leads, into some education to learn how to do it. $10,000 a month. You don't need a brick and mortar. You could do it from your home. You could do it virtually. Like you literally could do it for $10,000 a month, and that's all your risk is.
Yeah.
And then guess what? You could go pop a deal that makes you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And guess what? It's all profit. There's nothing in between. You don't have, like, you have a commission. That's your overhead. And it's crazy to me that business actually exists.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it the whole time. But now that I've tried all the other businesses and I've explored all the other opportunities, I'm like, if I was trying to get cash flow, I would be trying to put money I would be putting towards a laundromat or these other things and really just try to make this thing work. Because I've done it the last 10 years, and that's the thing that's just always chugged along in the background as I've pursued other things. And it's allowed me to pursue other things. It allowed me to build my podcast, to throw cool events, to build other companies. If I didn't have that going in the background, none of those other things would happen.
Yeah, especially because we, over the last few years, like yourself and like Brandon and a lot of people included, that's why I loved y'all's podcast. We talked about it last time, where it's just, okay, everyone's got these 500 doors plus, but it's just like interest rates. Oh my God. Like, how are we keeping this afloat without doing capital calls? Because
the risk.
It's rough.
The risk is so massive.
Even when you do it correctly.
Even when you do it correct, because the market changes. But that's what I'm saying. Like with wholesaling, okay, if you don't get deals, you lost $10,000. That's a lot less than millions.
Fair.
Or $200,000. And people are so scared to invest in spend $10,000 in marketing, $5,000. I'm like, but you're talking about buying a laundromat?
Yeah.
You know what your overhead is on the laundromat? Your brick and mortar, your lease, if you own it, all the employees, running the utilities. You somehow think that's less risky than what I'm telling you.
Yeah. That's very fair. And I think this is super interesting. I want to come back. I want to go into how you're setting up your systems, how you're setting up your processes. And it's very interesting because I'm glad that I'm the one asking because I know nothing about wholesaling.
Oh, perfect.
So now you get to really be able to like, okay, cool. Me at zero, like I'm ground floor. So people listening will be in the same road.
My goal is you're going to be like, bro, right after this, you're like, I'm starting.
Turn me on,
Yeah,
dude.
I'm ready. Give me the leads. Let's go.
Yeah. I'll say real quick how we structured our business deal. So it's just like with laundromats, yeah, there's limited upside, but I will play devil's advocate. There is a way to do small business that really does make sense.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing in real estate where it's the money, knowledge, or the hustle. And so in this one, in this specific transaction, I can go into directly like what I did. So for me, we bought it for $900,000. It's a commercial kitchen hood cleaning company. So it's required by law. They've been running for years. We have trailing financials of growing profits. We just bought it. I've got one of my guys from my community that's going to be the one that's operating the thing.
Okay.
So I'm taking a minority equity percentage. I put in $75,000 to buy this thing.
Okay.
I get $4,000 in passive distributions monthly, paying up until 24 months that are paying me off with 8% IRR, and then I maintain my equity.
Yep.
So it's just for me, I was like, home run deal.
Yeah.
So it's like I get equity and I get upside and I get a kick-ass IRR.
Yeah.
And I get to help support one of my guys to getting out of their business, but then getting out of their job to be getting into this business. But however, I see your point where there's so many different ways that this can go wrong. So let's actually hit on that for a second, because Cody talks about, and I want to have her on the podcast too. We teach people business buying too, and they say, "Oh, I'm just going to buy a business and hire an operator."
Yeah.
That's the easiest thing in the world. Talk about that because you've hired operators. I was just with your operator on his podcast,
Yep.
Brian DeVilla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. By the way, Cody has a book coming out, so I think
it's out.
I don't know, but she just hit me up actually about coming on the show because they're going to do a big launch at the end of the year.
Sick.
Yeah. Anyways, like with hiring an operator and just letting it run, it can,
Yeah.
but odds are it won't. It's a business. The economy's always changing. Business is changing. Competition's coming in. Regulations business is business. Investing is investing. Nothing is guaranteed. And something could work for years and be great. And then all of a sudden, something happens. The market shifts, regulation, all those different factors that could put you out. That's just the reality of business. And like I said, there's been a lot of businesses that I've started that made me a lot of money, and I had to shut them down for one reason or the other. And it's not like they lost money, or I don't even consider them a failure. It's just, hey, this is no longer serving me, a great opportunity, whatever the case was. Maybe I have better opportunities. And that's the point I was making about this wholesaling business. I don't think your business you bought is a bad deal. It's great. But if we're going to compare apples to apples, do I think it's better than what I just said? And I would say probably not.
Sure.
If you're willing to do it. But once again, it doesn't make it a bad deal. It's maybe we're comparing an A versus an A+.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. If you're comfortable with talking about and we can go into as in-depth as you want to or keep it as shallow as you want to, but what goes into the decision-making process for you to shut down businesses versus starting new businesses? You're very vertically integrated, which I want to talk about later in this podcast episode after talking about the wholesale idea.
Yeah.
But you have this wealthy kingdom. You have all your different have so many different companies that are all housed within here. What goes into your decision-making for cutting one loose or adding a new one to the vertical?
Good question. So I've grown a lot in the last even like just couple of years. And it's funny because if you listen to every great entrepreneur, they're always like, focus on one thing. Like that's always everybody's advice. And it's true. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. And I tell people to do it all the time. And then I go look at what I'm doing and it's, dude, you got like 100 million things going on. And granted, they could be vertically integrated, but at the same time, every new thing takes away attention. So it's even though you're passive on this new endeavor, it will take up your headspace at various points. The acquisition, getting it launched, checking in on your guy, and okay, he's got it going, and then there's going to be a problem, and now it's got your attention again. So the point is, the more things you have, regardless of if they're passive or not, they're going to take up attention and time and headspace. And I've just realized that I am far better served going deeper on just the really big winners that I know can be big than having $1 million business here and then another $1 million business here and then a $2 million business here. It's better to just have, $100 million business if that was the case, or 2 8-figure businesses.
Yeah.
And so that's been my mindset is like, I can go way deeper on a thing and truly own it, be like the best in the world.
ROE, return on energy, return on effort.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's hard, dude. Like constantly think about every business, if they're different, needs different advertising, different landing pages, different copy, different VSLs, different ads, different organic content. I got to create different affiliate partners for each one. It doesn't matter if it's a 7-figure or a 6-figure or an 8-figure. They all require the same amount of, a business is a business. It still needs all those things to grow.
I've got a really good question that is one that I've been toying with myself. After you get everything that you want and you have all the financial success and you're like for you, an extra $100,000 a month probably doesn't like really move the needle and it wouldn't register. You'd be like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to use that to invest more. But personally, for like you and Minnie, it doesn't really move the needle. So how do you make decisions on what you say yes to and what you say no to in your personal life? Because all this business conversation all comes back down to, the funnel comes back down to your week. When you wake up in the morning, what are you doing? What are you working on? And what are you saying no to? So when money's out of the object and you've already had enough money, what factors do you use to say yes or no to meetings, to businesses, to everything?
I would say that I don't know that money ever stops being out of the equation.
Okay.
And I think people have this misconception that they think rich people don't stress about money, because rich people absolutely do. And I think you don't really have to look further than a guy like Elon Musk. Think about what Elon had to go through to even get to this point. He sold PayPal, made hundreds of millions, risked it all, almost went bankrupt buying Tesla and these things. Yeah. It ended up working out. He keeps going. And then all of a sudden he buys Twitter for $40 billion. And then the market and the economy tank. So he massively overpays, has to go raise all this capital to buy it. Then he constantly is needing more money to go and grow all these different, that dude, I guarantee is stressed about money.
Sounds terrible.
He's stressed about his budgets and hitting his goals and everything else. Sure, his personal wealth is fine, but dude, his businesses could go under tomorrow. He's scared about regulation. He's scared about freedom of speech. So the stress does not go away. And the same thing is true with me. It's, I reached a personal level of financial success, but then guess what? Something happens that you just can't predict. Oh, you get a lawsuit. Oh, you get a bunch of bad deal, a bunch of flips turned because the interest rates doubled. You're expecting to make a couple million. Now all of a sudden you got to write checks for a couple million. That's a massive cash flow swing. And so for me, you don't think I was stressed about money? I'm freaking stressed about money when that happens. Now, the other part too, which is what's made me really think about all this and why I think the wholesale business is better, is you go through that, you go through everything. And then you start selling off your real estate. In a flip, you're always going to sell it. In a development, you're going to sell it at some point. In whether they're rentals or all these things, I started to realize too that equity is great, but it's not always what it seems. It's not like a stock where I can't
pay your bills with equity.
Yeah. And it's, I need this rental to sell. How long is this going to take? I need this flip to sell. Oh, we're going into the winter. Things are slow. That's how it always is. Definitely for me, money is always a thing that you got to worry about. And then, because even let's say we're about to scale, right? So we've been through a recession the last couple of years, and let's say we're going to go into scale mode. Now I need more money to scale. I got to go hire people. I got to go get uncomfortable. I got to go spend way more on marketing than I've ever spent. I got to go maybe get a new facility. You're always just, I've yet to find one rich person who's in growth mode, who's not retired and just out of the picture completely. They got the FU money, they call it. Most people are always going to worry about it, no matter how wealthy you are.
What factors do you use to decide how much to put back onto the table, to push back into the pile versus how much to keep at home and put in your pocket?
Dude, that's a great question. And I have been guilty of constantly gambling, being from Vegas.
That's what I think about with Elon is he's never going to be satisfied or content.
And me too. I've always been pushing my chips in. And most real estate investors are that way, right? It's, I got some cash. Let me go buy this business.
Yeah, because you feel uncomfortable when you have cash.
Yeah, let me go buy this next rental. I got to put my money to work. And so I think a lot of times we put ourselves in very vulnerable positions. And I know I'm super guilty of this. And so I don't know, the older I get, the more I realize a lot of things that I didn't believe from a lot of these guys who've been around really long, I now believe. So when I hear things like Dave Ramsey talk about this stuff, I'm like, freaking Dave, dude, that's not the way. But then you start to realize, and you're like, I understand why he says this. I may not agree with everything, but I now understand this part because it happened to me. When I see Cardone say, you shouldn't buy single family home, your personal residence, it's a liability. I'm like, dude,
what are you talking about?
I've made so much money on my personal residences. But then as we're talking about now, bro, you could go rent a personal residence in really nice area for half of what your mortgage would be. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah. I read this book. I'm trying to remember the name. I think it was by like Lane Taylor or someone. It was the CEO of Keller Williams recommended it to me, Mark Willis, when I was at one of his events. And he said that the job of a CEO, which like I'm a few years behind you. So it's like super fun for me to interview you because I get perspective from you that's a few years ahead. And so I'm like, I was telling Tiffany, I'm right in that sweet spot where I'm a few years removed from people that are listening, but I'm also like in like arm's reach where I'm like, okay, I see what Ryan's doing. So it's now I've got a team of 6 and we're scaling up. We got an extended team of 12 and we've got a few $1 million, got a few multi-million-dollar business. We're working on 2 7-figure businesses. I'm trying to figure out what the hell does a CEO do? And people talk about that until you actually do delegate and elevate most of the world off. And then you're like, what do I do? And his advice in the book, which I can't remember for the life of me, but he says the job of a CEO is to set the vision and direction of the company, hire, attract, and retain top talent, and make sure you don't run out of cash. So that's what made me think of that.
Yeah.
As I was talking about, make sure you don't run out of cash. I want to let you riff on that or any ideas or additions you would add.
I think that those would be the top 3 things I worry about. Yeah, I think those are
right.
great. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put the book in the show description and figure it out.
If I had to, like, I couldn't top any of those 3. Like, I have to come up with all the ideas and the vision and growth.
Yeah.
I need to bring in top tier people and I would say maybe the only other part is not just bringing in top tier people, but also making grade A relationships that are going to help the business. Because I have a relationship with all these people we just talked about, except Elon. I don't have a relationship with
Elon. Shout out.
Yeah, Elon. Why don't we know each other?
Come on.
Whether it's Grant or Cody or any of the people we've mentioned,
Yeah.
it's because I have a relationship with them. I can bring them on the podcast, which is going to help our business. I've been on their stuff, which helps my business. I can pick their brain, which helps our business. All of it makes sense. And then there's other guys I have relationships with that we raise money from to buy deals and whatever the case is. So my job as the CEO is to make as many relationships as possible for both people that work here and for people outside of here that I know can benefit our business. And then, the cash, right? Like being responsible and being a good steward of cash. And I think a recession always exposes the things you've been doing wrong. And so I feel like I've been a good steward for most of my career. Like, I feel like I invest in mostly good things, but I've done a lot of stupid things. There's things I regret that I'm like, never doing that again. And I think it's just as you get older. And honestly, it's all your risk tolerance changes as your priorities shift.
Sure.
So when I was younger and getting started and I had no kids and no employees, it's let's just risk it all. If I fail, it's all good. So anytime I see a young person who's scared to take risk, I'm like, dude, no. Like, you need to step up. You have nothing, literally nothing to lose. And that's the truth. So any young person listening to this, you don't have kids, you don't have a spouse, you have nothing to, like, you better spend every dollar you got trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Dude, it's such an interesting topic, and it's such a sweet, nuanced spot in between because now I've felt both sides of it. And some people that are listening to this will understand where we're coming from, and some people are going to be like, all right, dudes, okay, we get it. But then again, you're listening to a real estate and entrepreneurship podcast. This is what you signed up for, guys. But it's just, so I just came off of a season of where I'm like, I've got more money in my account than I've ever had.
Yeah.
It's like the business is profitable. The margins are great. We're doing the right stuff. I got money in my account. I start to take my foot off the gas a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I've been there many times.
And I start spending a little bit more money on watches and stuff that I shouldn't be spending on. And then now I just invested a big old chunk into this business.
Yep.
And I'm reinvesting in a few other ventures too, and an LP and a few deals. And now all of a sudden it's a perfect storm. All of a sudden you have some stuff happen with your business and some chargebacks and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait a second. I haven't felt this stress in 2 years.
That's what I'm saying.
So
it doesn't matter how much money you've made to this point. You could make $100 million and make a couple of wrong decisions that put you in a really bad spot.
So what's the sweet spot? Because you don't want to be too comfortable, but you don't want to be too strapped.
Yeah.
At least $50, huh?
Yeah. At
That'll
least
do it.
payroll next week.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just, like I said, for me, I don't think I made the wrong decisions when I was starting out going all in. I maxed out all my credit cards. I went all in, and I was all in for years. And then, I've stayed all in for a long time, and I had 50 to 70, I had 50 flips so I always had 50 to 70 flips for 5 years.
So you always had to have a bunch of operating capital.
But yeah, like I would have hundreds of thousands in mortgages every month on those flips. You don't know when they're going to sell, timing, if properties go over budget, all those things. And so then, like I said, the market shifted at the middle of 22 when they doubled rates. We'd never seen that before. So I couldn't predict that they're going to go double rates and like literally just destroy
Everything.
all sales and all this stuff. And so everything sat, cash flow tightened up, wasn't expecting it, had to write checks to sell all these deals. The good news was I had plenty of reserves, but that's because I felt like I was a good steward. So if I didn't and I was buying more watches, because I absolutely could have been buying a lot of things, and I had millions and millions in reserves, but I chose to keep heavy cash reserves just in case, and the just in case happened. And I think that reserves are going to be dictated on what you're actually able to have, what your goals are, where you are in life, how risky your business is. Because, for example, let's say I'm just back to the wholesale business. So this is actually what propelled me to really go all in on this model.
Because it's not capital intensive.
No. So let's say I have no properties, but right now we have about 40 deals right now. So we still have basically the same amount of deals going, but we don't have to have any risk with them. It's just paper.
So wouldn't the risk be on the dispo side? So
No,
what if
but
you're unable to dispo?
I'm out my marketing for that month. So if my marketing right now is about $50,000 a month, my only risk is really, sure, we still have some other overhead stuff. We got a couple of salaries. Most guys are commission only though. Sure, we got some salaries. Obviously, we got the building. Let's just say my overhead is, I don't know, $80K a month in like hard costs between marketing and those things for that business.
Sure.
It's like, all right, I got 40 contracts. I know we're going to make at least 80K. So I know we're going to, at the very worst, break even. And I'll still have a bunch of contracts that, obviously like the risk is them not selling. But my point is, it's a very different risk than when I still was spending that same 80K plus having all the mortgage payments and rehabs and everything else because I still had to get deals. So I still had to spend that money. I still needed sales guys. I needed more project managers. And now I have $20 million of debt out on the streets. That's a totally different business that will require way more reserves, way more everything.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a little bit, and then I want to move into a few like asset protection like topics here. But let's hit on the wholesale business because it's just like you and I both know 100 people plus that are like, I'm gonna go be a wholesale freaking expert.
Yeah,
and then it's 9 months deep.
yeah.
And they're like, wait a second, I thought this is supposed to be easy. And especially in today's market, you're still trying to get these properties. So what is your way of doing it? Because you seem to have an automated and a passive way of doing it. You say you have a team, like an acquisitions team, a dispo team. So for somebody that's brand new and they're like, all right, Ryan, I hear what you're saying, dude, but I can't even figure out how to wholesale a freaking property. How do I build this system?
All right. And this is also why I like wholesaling. It's like the simplest business I have because
simple scales.
Yeah, it's so simple because you're in education, so you can appreciate this. The education business is actually a lot harder than people think.
Fulfillment, yeah.
That's just like one hard part. Fulfillment, making sure people get great value, making sure you throw your events great, people are getting coached up, the call, all that, that has its levels, right? But then you got to constantly come up with new ideas, new ads, new angles, new offers, webinars, masterclasses, workshop. You got to come up with all these different things in order to achieve the same result of people getting mentorship and everything else. And then that's the game. You got to constantly be innovating the front end. With wholesale, you don't have to do any of that on the front end. And your fulfillment is really simple. It's just moving the deal. It's a one-time deal and it's done. I don't have a 12-month commitment to this person. Let's just move the deal and it's done. On to the next deal. And the front end is so simple because, for me, before this new way I'm doing it, I was doing TV commercials. So I did TV commercials for 4 years and it was literally the same TV commercial for 4 years. Could you run the same ad on Facebook for 4 years?
No, that's 4 minutes, 4 hours.
It lasts 4 days, and then you got to make a new ad.
Comments, right? This guy's a scam.
Yeah, so, dude, I ran the same TV commercial for 4 years and got leads consistently Like literally the marketing was so automated. And I paid an agency to do it because I didn't know how to run TV commercials. Paid them $3,000 a month and it was all good. And literally I just choose my ad spend and we just budget our ad spend based on where the company was at, based on what we were closing at and all those things. So marketing was automated. Marketing is absolutely not automated in most other businesses. So there's that. Most people can't do TV though. You got to spend $20K plus a month. So now if somebody was starting today, I would say you have two options. Okay. You want to automate lead flow. You just got to tell me your budget. It's not free. You can't get leads free.
Yeah.
People will be like, can I get referral? Yeah, you can, but that's not free. That's you spending all this time hustling, trying to figure it out. But if you're trying to build like a true business, it needs capital in some way. So I say the minimum you need to spend is about $2,000 a month. If you're willing to spend $2,000 a month, you can do outbound marketing. You can hire a VA, pull data, get your softwares. You can get education. You can do everything you need at $2,000 a month for somebody starting out. If you're someone like me who wants to go just like really fast, really quick, get better leads, because cold call leads are just, they're cold calls. Like they're the lowest quality lead you could get. We do primarily meta ads now. And so I took all my skills from education actually in making ads and all these things for years and spending millions. And I said, why don't I just use this for direct to seller? Nobody else is really doing it. Like I know everyone in the game. Nobody is like doing it at a high level. I was like, nobody has spent more than me in the game on Facebook ads running them themselves. I've spent the most out of any of these guys. And I've made the most podcasts. I've made the most, like nobody's going to do it better. So I was like, let's do it. Turns out those leads were a quarter of the cost and just as good. I was like, holy crap, this is the golden goose.
Oh man.
So we start running it in my business and just starting getting deals like gangbusters. So then all my students are like, dude, can you teach me how to do it? And I'm like, not like to be a dick, but it's so hard. Like you got to get good on camera. You got to edit the videos, come up with hooks. You got to get landing pages. You got to get a media buyer. It's going to cost you 10, 20,000. Like my team costs me a lot.
We're going into that right now because we do no paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, can you do it for us? And I was like, if we do it for you, we're just going to run my ads in your market because I'm not going to go make you ads and deal with all this crap. And they're like, that'd be even better. Like your brand and our market, it's already proven. And I was like, you're right. I was like, all right, just pay me as an agent. Pay me $3,000 a month. We'll do it. Just tell me what you want to spend and let's go. And that birthed my newest company that like I think is going to be massive called Lead Kitchen. And so at Lead Kitchen, we literally just do that. We run my ads that I already know work. We run them in everywhere. Like now we have clients all across the country running them and they get they get the lead. I don't want to say they get deals on autopilot. They get the leads on autopilot. So we can automate lead flow if you have capital. And it's just, bro, if you tell me you want to spend $10,000 this month, all right, done. You don't have to do anything. So what does that leave? That leaves the other part of wholesaling, which is sales. You got to be able to convert these leads because if you suck at sales, you're not going to make any money. What I realized first starting that business was like, oh, dang, I actually got to train these guys on sales. They don't understand how to do this properly. They don't have their CRM set up. They don't have the right script. They don't know how to do special things like novations and all these other tricks that allow us to capitalize on every lead. And so I built courses. I built sales training. We do one-on-one coaching with them. We do all these things to make sure that they have success on the sales side. And so now we get people that join the first month and get deals in their first month, and they've never done it this way before. And then that just leaves the dispo side, selling the deal. And if you do something that we call innovation, you can actually just throw it on the market. So once you go on the market to the general public, like your buyers come in. You don't even need to find them. They will just make you offers.
So you're going off market, getting the deal under contract,
and putting it on
the MLS.
Yeah. So over half of our deals are done that way. So dispo is actually super easy.
You're not even dressing them up. You're not even slapping paint.
No, we're listing them, and you're going to get the retail buyers who want that property. They're going to pay the most. You don't need to hunt them down. They will come to you. So dispo actually gets a lot easier too. So you start thinking about this, and it's the front end is automated with marketing. Dispo is automated if you can do novations. All we have to do is just pitch. So if you only had to learn one skill in business, which is sales in this case, nothing else, because everything else is done for you. I don't know any other businesses where that's a thing that makes big money.
I think it's a sick business model because hitting on, you're like going upstream and downstream of the pain points. You're like, okay, cool. What are the issues that people are running into? Lead flow, sales skills, and then dispo. So it's just like if you could just learn one of the three, because if you're buying a business or if you're starting a business, you sit in every seat.
Yeah, you sit in every seat.
And it's
like you to learn marketing, you to learn sales, you to learn how to find buyers. That's why they fail.
Cash flow management. Like I had to learn everything.
Yeah.
Like,
and I get it. It's hard. It is hard to do a wholesale deal on your own because you're just like, right out the gate, you're like, okay, so how do I find deals? Yeah. And it's like,
how do I get a buyer's list?
How do I find a buyer? Do I just call them all? Okay, if I get somebody on the phone, how do I talk to them? So there's so much that they have to learn. But if you can just make them learn one thing, which in this case is sales, their probability of success gets significantly higher.
So it's a lot like Hormozzi's gym launch model, where he was able to automate. He was able to say, okay, I know how to run ads. Yep. I know how to get lead flow. You're opening a gym. You have no idea how to fill this gym. I'll fill it for you. And in the beginning, he would fly out and he would sell it for him. But he was like, no, this is a terrible idea.
Exactly.
So you were able to bypass that bottleneck.
Well, what's funny too, though, is like part of the guarantee, because I said the worst case is your risk with this business is you go spend 10 grand in a month and you don't get a deal. You don't make money. So I was like, okay, if you don't get a deal and you want to quit, send us all your leads and we'll work them and we'll just chop it 50-50. That way you can recoup at least part of it or even more. Maybe you end up making money. And we actually had that happen with multiple people. And it also proves the point that like, dude, this would work for you if you just figured out sales. Because we're working your old leads. At the end of the day, a lead is most valuable when you got it within 5 minutes.
Yeah, speed of lead.
Yeah. Harvard said that your conversion rate drops by 80% if you don't hit the lead within 5 minutes.
I believe it.
For us to go get their leads months later and then just go hit them and work them and still get deals, I don't even know how many deals you could have got if you just were good at sales.
Yeah. Damn. And then so where can people go to find that business? Because I know it's in your bio, correct?
Yeah, leadkitchen.com.
Leadkitchen.com. Awesome. And for the sake of time, because I want to keep us tight, for the last 13 minutes here, I really want to talk about what we discussed in this podcast, which is what happens when you get sued or somebody tries to screw you or something happens like that. Something that I don't understand yet, like really at all, is asset protection.
Okay.
And like how to form holding companies, LLCs, how to structure your different business entities. Is that something that we can hit on? Because, dude, I understand it at a general enough level to where I'm not a complete idiot.
Yeah.
But not enough to where it's like I need to learn the game like you guys play it, because that's what we're starting to have assets that we really need to protect.
All right. So I think the first thing, by the way, I'm not a lawyer. Caveat.
This is not legal advice.
This is not legal advice.
But we can wholesale the hell out of your deals.
But I am a wholesaler, so if you want to learn wholesaling, I'll give you all the advice. But no, I think you already touched on the first one. The funniest thing I see is when people are like, dude, I got to protect my stuff. And I'm like, you don't own anything. They're like, should I get a lot of new wholesalers? So, should I get an LLC? I'm like, bro, you're broke. Like, you have nothing to protect.
Or I have a tax problem. Dude, you don't have a tax problem. Yeah, you don't make your money.
I think I need to get rentals because I heard I can save my tax. I'm like, you don't make money. Like, how? Okay, number one, you must at least be a millionaire before you even start thinking about this. Okay.
Fair, yeah.
Number two, like first it starts with just getting an LLC on your business. So I already know you got that going on. I think the next step is having a just personal family trust. And that's going to be good for protecting not only your assets, but also if something happens to you, like all the right things happen, how you want it to happen for your future kids. Are you married?
No, not yet.
Okay. Obviously you don't have a wife, but for me, it's like, all right, if something happens to me, then we know exactly what's going to happen with my wife, my kids, my parents, the businesses, like everything is spelled out to a T. And hopefully this thing can keep going in some form or fashion without me. I know that some things would suffer, but I think that my house flipping business, clearly, it doesn't even use me. Yeah. Like, it can keep going. I think that...
And then your ads, they can put like a little RIP in the corner.
And I think...
He was a good guy.
Hey, look, people still run like these ads.
We're dying to buy your...
People run dead people's stuff all the time. So I think we could totally still do it. But yeah, whatever. So all that stuff goes down. So I think you need a trust. There are other different types of trust, too, that protect you even more. There's things you can do, and I do this too, where like an LLC owns another LLC, and so you'll have like groupings of LLCs in a certain LLC. So I can have, let's call it my real estate LLCs. Let's just say I have, I don't know, one for these rentals. I have one for this apartment building, one for flipping, one for wholesaling. And then they're all going to be owned by a parent LLC, which is then owned by a trust, which is then owned by another. Like, you could make it as complex as you want.
Yeah. That's where I glaze over.
But you don't even need to think about it. Just literally hire a lawyer.
Just get a good lawyer.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I wouldn't be like, yeah, I'm going to do asset protection based on what Ryan told me in 2 minutes. Like, I think, like, just hire the lawyer. It's not even a lot of money. Like, they'll charge you no more than $5,000, and like, they'll do it all.
Yeah, it's just something, because as soon as you get into the education space or you're in business and real estate, like, there's always something. And then you have the few that come around you, and then you're like, ooh, okay, that one was close. Let me be careful here.
Yeah, I've dealt with.
It's like, it's not a if it's going to happen, it's when.
It's more like it's just normal if you get to a high level. Think about how often Tesla is getting sued and targeted. To go back to the Elon example, you know how many lawsuits that are probably against that guy right now? Hundreds, if not more, right? And same thing with anyone big. Who knows how many Cardone is dealing with at this very moment in time. Most lawsuits aren't technical lawsuits yet. They're demands behind the scenes, and so nobody would know anything's going on. Most FTC and SEC investigations are happening behind the scenes before anything's ever filed. And I have friends who've gone through FTC stuff. I have friends who've gone through SEC stuff. I'm always like, I just know these things are going to always happen. People are going to sue you. And dude, I've had so many happen in real estate. I've had them happen in other businesses. It's just something you deal with.
Yeah, fun. Like entrepreneurship.
They say, my friend Darius Daniels, he's a pastor and entrepreneur, and he goes, people always want the blessing, but they don't talk about what he calls the backside of the blessing. And the backside of the blessing is everything that comes with the blessing. So, you want to be famous? You want to have a podcast? Get ready to deal with the haters and all the comments and everything else. Oh, you want a big house flipping business? Get ready to carry all that debt and be able to pay out if some flips go south. Oh, you want to have a big education company? Well, get ready when people start calling you a scammer and all this stuff. Like, it all is just part of that blessing. You can't have it if you don't deal with the other stuff too.
Yeah, it's like that quote where it's, you ask for patience, God's not going to give you patience. He's going to give you opportunities to make you patient. You know, it's like, oh, I want strength. He's going to give you opportunities to get strong.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So in closing, right now, are you in a season, it sounds like, of taking your chips back off the table now and putting them back into safety? Or is that because it sounds like you shut down a lot of the stuff and you're trying to keep your main thing, work on this wholesale business, scale this thing? What's next? What season are you in now?
I think 2024 has been a season of refocusing and revamping everything. So, like, once again, strategies work until they don't. So
You have to pivot.
You always have to pivot. Now, the key is figuring out what pivot works and then just literally putting as many chips onto that pivot for as long as it's willing to last. So if I was to look at my real estate business the last 10 years, I've gone through seasons where, hey, this is what we did for years and it worked great, and then it stopped working. And then this is what we pivoted to and it worked for years and it stopped working. With this Facebook thing, I don't know how long it's going to last for. I think it's got a ton of runway, years and years. But at some point, inevitably, it'll become saturated and we're going to have to pivot to the next thing. That's inevitable. But my point is, like, with this year, it has been a game of, we changed our business model to mainly flipping houses and marketing a certain way to this whole new way I just described. Novations, meta ads, everything like automated. And it's 10 times better with less risk than it was before. It's crazy. And I'm like, I wish I would have just figured that out earlier. But it took failing to force the pivot. In the education space, I've taught a lot of different things in educations over the years. Content, real estate, business, all this different stuff. Now we're really just hyper-focused back on real estate. And the reason is, like, everything is more congruent when we focus on real estate. Like, I like talking about content. I like talking about just general business. But if I just focus all my efforts on real estate, it's gonna complement everything else we have.
Yeah.
And it took me talking to a billionaire to really get that hammered home of just, bro, if you just focused on, so Neil Patel, he was at WealthCon speaking, and he's told me it multiple times over the years.
He's on my list.
Yeah, and he's, Ryan, dude, you would make so much more money if you just focused on real estate. And I understand now, and sometimes it just takes time. And so it's like, all right, if I just focused on making my wholesaling business better, that could be an 8-figure thing, okay? If I then get really good at that. And then I just focus on, for my education, only doing real estate. That's also like we've done 8 figures multiple years in that business. And now we have to do it in a different way because the economy's different. People don't just buy high ticket anymore. So now we're moving that to recurring. And so now my main thing is a $97 a month recurring and just building it up in a totally different way. So that is completely different than what it was the last 4 years. And then we got Lead Kitchen, and that's just a pure recurring business too. Just keep adding clients and they all pay $3,000. And soon enough, you go get a few hundred of those guys, you're an 8-figure business again.
Yeah, and you're on MRR, not ARR, which is even more valuable.
You have a significantly more valuable business, more predictable, less stress, higher margins, everything about it significantly better. The hard part is being willing to make the pivot and retool, because if I already had all this success before doing it a certain way, and then I say, hey, we're not going to do it that way anymore, guys. We're going to switch to this whole new way. It's painful. And that's what 2024 has been, switching everything over to what I know is a better way.
It's funny, man, because these people that are super rich, if you go to them and you ask them these questions, people don't understand because they haven't felt the pain yet. But even with my stuff, I try to say no to so many things because I'm just like, if I just focus on our community business, like that's what I focus on, and I'm not trying to buy this hotel, co-GP on, do this.
Exactly.
And I just keep my focus on the thing that's working, and that's super fun for me. I'm like, dude, that's way better. Back when we were talking about ROE, return on energy, return on effort, and then you can use that to scale through other people. So that's where passivity is found, on profits and people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my goal now is like, so those are my 3 like main businesses. And then I have Wealthy Kingdom for the ministry. And that's a whole different thing that we're doing. And I'm focusing my energy on there for all of our events now. You know, I used to hold WealthCon every quarter. I used to do all these different things. And now I made the decision that I want to focus all that event energy over at Wealthy Kingdom. I want to do more churches and revivals and different things. And because I can't do both. I can't make them both massively successful focusing on both. And so if I make the decision to focus on low ticket MRR in education, I don't necessarily need to hold massive events. Doesn't mean that all the wealth cons were for nothing or a failure. It's just things change. And we're still going to hold WealthCon, but it ain't going to be every quarter. All in all, I just think that you asked what it was and what I'm focused on. Like, I'm focused on earlier in the year, it was figuring out what was going to work. Middle of the year, we figured out, what the things were after trying lots of things. And then now to close out the year, it's like really, I would say, putting the final touches on them before 2025, which then it's like throwing gas on it. Because now we'll know, oh, dude, we got a proven thing. We know exactly how it works, how to onboard people, how to make sure they have quick success. We know this funnel works. We know everything works. The salespeople are dialed in. Turn on the ad spend and let's go crazy.
Let's rip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simple scales, fancy fails.
I never heard that. I like that.
You can take it. Just pay me dividends.
Fancy. I don't know.
Well, might drop it there. I might drop it. It's attached to a boomstick. But dude, where can people go? Because now everyone is, okay, I'm sick of this podcast. I want to go start wholesaling properties with Pineda. Where can they go? Where can they find out more about you, more about this business?
Yeah, I think just like I said, leadkitchen.com will be the best one for that. Obviously, we got other things too, but if you just submit there, we'll point you in the right direction, no matter what your budget is. Even if you can't afford Lead Kitchen, we'll figure out how to get you started.
Boom. And with that, it's been Ryan and Brian with the Action Academy podcast, signing off.